Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Gordon Kelly, and I'm part of the Leadership Insight Group. I have with me Harriet Anderson, who's also another colleague of mine, and our special guest is Cathy Caswell from good old Canada. She will tell us more a little bit where she's from. So the webinar tonight and this evening is also about thriving in the times of uncertainty. It's a very large subject to cover, but hopefully Cathy will point us in one or two of her directions, and especially with the logosynthesis, how it's steering us in this area. So, Cathy, would you like to just introduce yourself a little bit, where you're from, a little bit of your background, and then we'll go more into details about the theme.
Yeah, I am from Halifax in Nova Scotia on the Atlantic coast. And I was introduced to logosynthesis in 2013 when I met Willem Lammers. And I was at the time in a busy corporate role working for Kraft Foods and also going through a busy time at home. My husband had a pharmacy and the kids were into a lot of sports, and I like to volunteer for those organizations. So I thought I was thriving and I was doing very well at it. And yeah, so I was intrigued by Willem's work and I started training in it. And I've since moved on and sharing this work quite broadly now. So thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So coming to the theme for tonight, it's about thriving in certain times. I mean, like you say, uncertainty times and times when it's good, etc. So would you mind to elaborate a little bit more what it is for people when they feel this kind of feeling of thriving and not thriving, if we like to say it that way?
Yeah, I view it that we're all on a spectrum, right? Like when things are going good and we feel like we're in flow, then we can handle a lot. We feel creative. We feel like we're connected with other people or individuals working in groups, and we thrive on that contrast. But at times, like when things get uncertain, all of a sudden you start noticing some reactive behavior. So maybe it's the tone of voice, maybe it's people's posture, maybe you're feeling that you're not good enough at, or you're not learning quick enough, or you're not, things just aren't quite clicking the same. And when we go through a lot of change and uncertainty, that's when we get more and more contrast. And all of a sudden those behaviors that helped us do well initially are starting to get in the way a little bit. And quite often we don't even recognize it. We're doing what we know we should do, but it's the people around us that start to feel our tension a little bit and start to think, maybe there's some work that you should do.
So are we saying more it's about how we're allowing external factors affect us internally?
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. And how they affect us, there's an allowing part, and then there's a part of it. We're human, we react, right? Those are our survival instincts. When something happens, we don't have to stop and think about it, we react. And I often think of that Viktor Frankl quote about in between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space, there is our power to choose our response. And in our response is the freedom and growth. And so it's a matter of finding that space. And yeah, so when times are normal and we feel creative, especially in our groups, then we can, learn new things. We can have conversations that everybody builds on and contributes to. But then when there's a lot of change and uncertainty, all of a sudden people start reacting and responding a little different. And yeah, we don't have that same quality of interaction.
Could we be saying then it's a choice that we're making?
Yes. Yeah. And how do we make that choice?
Yeah.
And how do we recognize? I just listened on the weekend to Bruce Lipton, one of his presentations on kind of the power of beliefs and our subconscious thinking. And he's saying, 95% of the time we're operating based on subconscious thoughts and 5% is conscious. So that's, again, a little bit that space to choose, right? And so in normal times when we know what to do, we know how to do it, and we go fast and we're very efficient. But all of a sudden, when things change up, we have to stop and think about it. And that's a little bit where we get sidetracked, right? And so often we think we're making a choice, but we're operating on our auto programming.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of people, certainly when I read that the first time, that between the stimulus and the response, that there is a space. The first time I saw that, I said, "What do you mean?" Because very often the reactions come so quickly, because on autopilot mostly, that it feels like we don't have a lot to say about it. So I think for many people, it's kind of a new idea that we actually have a choice in how we respond, and that it's not necessarily automatic, like, because it's also a way of sort of, you can hide a little bit behind that and say, well, it's not my fault. It's my reaction. It sort of happens to me. And of course, that makes it very hard if you want to then communicate with somebody, because then there's nobody on the other side who was able to do something about it. So I think the first step is to realize that there is something you can say about your reactions. And then there's a lot more that you can do to channel or to guide the reactions, to decide where you actually want to go. So I think the first step is to realize that you actually have a choice.
Yeah, so if I think of it like from performance reviews over the years, right? There's certain personality characteristics that keep showing up over and over again, right? They become patterned. And it's like, well, you can choose to act differently, but then it comes in a little bit into our beliefs, right? Like, why would I change something that I believe that I am doing what I should be doing? Exactly. And again, it's an automatic response. Even if I try to stop it, to your point, even if I try to stop it, I'm not stopping it.
It's not so simple, huh? No. Yeah. So that's where you get resistance in trying to change something, because people sometimes they feel quite powerless to do anything about it. Whereas in fact, there are options, there are possibilities. And this is actually what I really like about how you bring things forward, is that you really make it very clear where the options are and how you can actually make changes. In a fairly...
and I would say like the first point is even to be aware, because for me it was, and often when you talk to people, it's not me that has to change,
right?
And even from a leadership perspective, like it's, if you're in a leadership role and you've got a team reporting to you and they're not doing what they should be doing, obviously our automatic response is to react, right? It's and we're doing what we believe, both through the culture, because we've been modeled that behavior as to how we lead, from belief systems that we've gained from our parents and from our teacher role models. And so we're doing everything that we know is right, and yet there's tension in it, there's intensity in it. And so when we bring it out to someone, we don't always get the response that we're looking for, right? Like if we're asking them to do their job, which is a very, basic request, the energy that we bring to it sometimes can derail the whole conversation. So, yeah.
Are we saying here, and it's allowing people to have more clarity in their thoughts, or allowing the thoughts to come through that are more, giving them more clarity?
Yes.
And not, and also actually possibly slowing down a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. And that comes with that space, right? So then the question becomes, how do we find the space? And that's what I always struggled with. And for me, really what kind of intrigued me the most about Willem's work was at the stage I was in, reacting to my children. And it's like, how can you these are the most important people in your life, and how can you respond in such an intense way? But your children can really trigger strong reactions. And that's the same at work. You're working with coworkers. Everyone wants to do a good job, and yet our reactions get in the way. So then how can we find the space? And that's what I found with Willem's work, because it's energetic triggers that interrupt that space. And when you can eliminate those energetic triggers, then there is space to choose. And so then the work around logosynthesis becomes what are those triggers? How do you find them, and how do you eliminate them? And so we use our reactions to help find them. So when we start noticing that we're reacting, we can connect with what those triggers are. And then we use 3 simple sentences once we know what the trigger is to resolve the energy that's stuck in that, what we call a frozen perception, a sensory perception, an image, a sound. It might be the voice of a parent, or the image of an angry boss or something like that that gets in the way. And once that trigger is eliminated, then we can find the space to choose. And afterwards, when we talk to people, so what do you notice now? I have more clarity. I feel more peaceful. I have a sense of calm and focus. And so then you can have a better conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're getting out of those kind of mini jerk reactions to the stuff that triggers you, and once you know what triggers you, then you can just a bit more peace and quiet around that. And I came across it myself almost 7 years ago. And I did quite a bit of personal development work and therapy and coaching, etc. Being a coach myself as well. And I found it so easy, really, to apply and to see how quickly it worked. Once you see your trigger, once you find the trigger and the energy that is stuck in that trigger, with the 3 sentences, as you say, it helps to get the energy flowing again. And then the next time the same trigger comes along, the reaction is different, because actually then for me, it's not a trigger anymore. And so that has brought a lot of much more relaxation in my life. And I've seen it with clients as well. And it stays like that also. It's not, it works 5 minutes and then it all comes all back again. No, when the energy flows again, it flows, and that's it. And then you don't have to react in this immediate way anymore. And you can actually start to concentrate on your communication.
Yeah.
Instead of reacting one to the other, and you can actually start to exchange ideas and opinions and what have you. And then you can actually make progress.
It feels much more civil, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So much more.
I think, why didn't I learn this way back when I was just starting to work? So
Yeah.
we do have a lot of triggers. It's not like we have one trigger and everything's magically gone over our experience. So when we talk about triggers, those are frozen sensory perceptions. So if you think of an event happening, and say you were in a car accident, and you might have the image of the car, maybe you hit a tree, you might have the image of the tree, you might have the sound of the crash, you might, there might be a smell associated with some fuel or something. And those perceptions get frozen in our personal space. And Willem has developed a beautiful process to help identify them. And it's such an easy process once we get used to the method, that you can actually identify those images that are frozen. And then when you say the sentences and they're gone, then you feel more peaceful again. And so, for an example, when I was working at Kraft, we had a lot of computer systems. So I was on the sales side. So, we had one for sales planning, one for working directly with our customer, one for promotional spending. And so all these different systems, they kind of took time. And so they weren't always as fast as I would like. And I grew up on a dairy farm. And so that was quite busy, and we were go, 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 and it all worked well. But when I was you know, at craft and you're waiting for these systems to go and you're just sitting there. So then I would open another one and I would hit a bunch of buttons and try to move around and that froze up. And then I'd open another one and I would just get frustrated and I could, you know, feel my jaws clench and was like, okay, I'm not really helping anything here because it's not going faster because of that. And I was just get so mad and then I would just kind of shut it down. And everyone around me that was kind of having the same experience. So we would complain about how slow the systems were but it never really got fixed. And I was working in Halifax and our head office was in Toronto. And so one day I just said, okay, I'm going to do some logosynthesis on this and let's see. And so I did the method, and what came up for me as a frozen perception was we used to chase the cows and they were really, really slow, and you would chase them on a hot summer day. You could chase them pretty hard and they wouldn't really go any faster. And so I said the sentences on this perception of the cows on the hot summer day. And afterwards, it's like, okay, so now I feel calmer. And really what ended up happening as a result of that, I was able to call the help desk without hanging up. And I was able to work through the issue, and we were able to find something that affected the entire country, and we were able to resolve it and move on. And so it wasn't like miraculously every system was faster, but I also, when I sat there, I wasn't stressed out either. And so if you can, right, like it ends up, yeah, you can find solutions. And so that goes back to being able to thrive, right? If we're always caught in that reactive mode, we can't thrive because we're not finding creative solutions.
Yeah. It's not, you don't have any calm, any relaxation, any time to just, you know, let your ideas come up, because you're just, well, I know for myself, just so busy reacting to everything left, right, and center that there's no space, no time for anything creative to come up.
And if you're in a leadership role and you're bringing that energy, then everyone around you is just looking like you're wacko. And right. And so they feel that tension. And if they're feeling that tension, then they can't settle down to focus on their work.
And they start to react themselves and etc. And then, you know, it's just, it snowballs.
Yeah. And so quite often, even, you know, when I read a lot of the leadership articles and that, it's everybody has coping techniques, or how do you cope in these environments? But really what Willem has brought to it is how do you resolve it? And so the first part is being aware that I react, and that wasn't an easy task for me, right? Like, no, it's not me, that's the issue here, right? So the first is to notice that I react, and then to be willing to just kind of put it through this process so that I can resolve it. And then I can start from a calmer spot. And when I'm not as triggered, then it creates a more productive space. So that, like, think of the number of meetings you go into and you have the same discussion over and over again, and you never really resolve anything because everybody's talking and everybody's got their issue that they want addressed, but there's not really space there for creative solutions. And so if you find that you're in those patterns, then you can work on that.
It's interesting how people like to play with patterns, huh?
Yeah.
Especially in the leadership role, they always go with their same pattern that they've known for so many years, yet it's not helping them and it's not helping the others who are working with them. And yet they always think it's external. They always think it's the circumstance or the situation that's created the problem. But actually, no, it's them themselves. And as you said, once they kind of recognize that it's them,
and that you can do something about it. And I guess to me, the biggest thing is, and, you know, I kind of write about that, is that our beliefs blind us. So we believe what we're doing is right.
Oh, yeah.
And we have been conditioned to believe what we are doing is right. But, you know, we live in a changing world. And if we can't change, if we're stuck in those rigid patterns, then we can't move beyond it and we can't grow. And again, you know, if you go back to those computer systems at Kraft, well, when they brought in a new computer system, I was pretty efficient at the old system. And so then I had to unlearn and relearn, and then that got frustrating. And meanwhile, someone that's new to the role comes in and they just learn the new system. It's like, wait a minute, how did you get so fast at that, right? And then so, but it's a matter of being able to notice what I'm reacting to. And so if I'm frustrated that I'm not going fast enough, if I get stuck in that pattern, then I'm not going to learn anything new. There's no space there to learn something new. But if I can resolve what I'm reacting to, then I can, maybe not quite as fast as someone that's new to the role, but I can learn it, right? And that's a big thing in leadership as well, is that whole retraining piece. And how do we retrain? And especially if it's someone that's been an expert in their role, then how do you retrain them? And to me, logosynthesis has such huge potential because it allows you to resolve some of those old learnings so that you're open to new.
Yes, yes, and the beliefs that go with the old learnings, because it's also these nice old beliefs. You know, they generally have served us well in the past, and so we believe that this is the right way to do it, and that very often then becomes it's the only way to do it. And then, of course, there's not much margin for changing anything except saying you have to change. But yes, that's never in your control. Even as a manager, you can tell people to do something else, and they may do it, but not necessarily the way you would want them to. But the big challenge is to look at yourself and say, how am I influencing this whole process? And I certainly do not remember when I was studying for my MBA that was a subject that came up in any of the courses. Very often you have to really bump into a big issue to realize that, you know, you have to start changing something, because, you know, you're not getting anywhere. But of course, it's much more pleasant and easy and relaxed if you can get to that kind of thinking a little bit before everything crashes or everybody starts to react so much that nothing is possible anymore. But
and to me, I really
to start looking at yourself and to think about stepping out of your comfort zone of what you know and what you're used to.
Yeah. And to me, I never really knew how to change until I was introduced to logosynthesis. And that's what intrigued me so much, is so these behaviors that when I'm in the moment, that's the way it is, right? Like, you know, that look that I give if somebody does something, like that's an automatic response. And I didn't know how to change that.
Yeah.
And especially you think like in the work environment, when automatically you're going to have relationship challenges because we think differently. If you think of diversity and inclusion in the workplace, we're introducing all this diverse thought and people don't think alike. That contrast is going to create tension. And that's part of the growth, but it's also part of the tension, and that can negatively impact our cultures. And so until I was introduced to logosynthesis, I didn't know how to resolve those reactions. And by reactions, it's the thoughts, it's the emotions, and it's also the physical sensations. And they can really hijack us, right? Like when people get angry, it's not like, oh, I'm angry. It's like, no, I feel it in my body, right? I'm angry, and everybody else around me feels it. And so having the power to do it makes it different than just saying, oh, you should, you know, change how you react to that person, or you should forgive this person. Well, now I can actually do that. I have a method to do it.
Yeah, I like what you've both been highlighting a few points there. What I got there from was we're not in control of anything really.
Right.
Not even in control of what's going on in here. And then the other aspect that you were sharing about there, Cathy, was we seem to separate what's here and what's in the body, but actually it's all one. It's just one form of chemical reaction that we relate to as being energetic that creates that the formless into the form,
Yeah.
if we wish to say, into the form of what we see as being real.
Yeah.
When it's not actually real.
And those reactions give us such great information, right? Like those reactions kind of tell us this is your cue that something is not matching your beliefs or something is not matching what is in your experience. And so being able to resolve that is powerful.
Yeah.
And people can feel it. Eh?
Yeah, and what I'm coming back to here is what I'm hearing here is the more you kind of go into how am I going to get out of this, the more it kind of piles on top of you, in effect. Huh? The more stress, the more it's them, it's not me. And it piles on and it piles on and it piles more on top of us. Yet there's actually, if as you're saying there, what I'm understanding is there's nothing really anything to do apart from recognize that it was just the beliefs that were playing with you.
Right. And knowing to take ownership, in my opinion, is to take ownership to resolve it. Right.
Exactly.
So I'm responsible for my behaviors. And and again, it becomes a little bit what is appropriate behavior or not. So, I worked at an organization where it's, we are respectful. Well, define respectful to me and what level of the scale, and it varied depending which group you were with, right, as to how they defined respectful. And so someone new comes in, they're like, oh, this isn't my group at all because it doesn't feel comfortable to me. And there's two elements. One is, if I'm new into a group and I don't feel comfortable, then, I have some work to do to resolve what I'm reacting to. But maybe the group might have a little bit of work to do to make themselves feel more supportive for someone new coming in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of recognizing that.
Yeah. And what I very much like about the approach, and Richard, that Cathy has written 2 books in the meantime on the subject. And I really like how you take a very pragmatic approach to it, by saying, okay, so your reactions, they are your starting point. And that is very specific and concrete to start working with. You don't have to start thinking about sort of major ideas about, no, what are you reacting to? What is my reaction? What am I reacting to? And then you're in the process and you can start resolving it. And I really like how you explain it, because it makes it very concrete and feasible. Because sometimes when you say, okay, frozen energy, that may sound a bit like, oh, this is all complicated. But in fact, reactions, we have them the whole time. And so it's a very easy starting point to then start finding out, okay, reaction that's being triggered, what's the trigger, and what can I do about that? And then you have a really good method and a tool to deal with that. And so I really like the way you make it really accessible. So it's not kind of some mystic approach or new age, whatever, but it's really practical.
Well, and I was introduced to logosynthesis a little differently than most people, because most people that have trained in it are coaches, counselors, or therapists, and they use it as a guided change to help people heal from trauma and anxiety. And of course, there was nothing wrong with me. I was just a little reactive. But so anyway, you come into it and all of a sudden, like, I grew up in a family where we didn't really spend much time on emotions or feelings or any of that, right? There was work to do, you got it done, you move on to the next thing. And I went into a corporate environment that was very much like that, both on the production side, marketing side, sales side. It's you've got a job to do, you get it done, you move on to the next thing, and you don't spend a lot of time in the whole feelings thing. And so I'm not especially sensitive to energy modalities and that. So that's not my background, but what really made sense to me with Willem's work, and I've always kind of connected to it a bit from a more spiritual level, I guess, is that and then I could just kind of notice, yeah, we all react. Every one of us reacts, and we don't always react in an appropriate manner. And when we can acknowledge that we don't always react in an appropriate manner, then it takes a lot of the other emotions in that out, right? Like if I know that someone's reacting in a way that I don't like, either I can get mad at them or I can say, oh, there's something going on. Help me understand it. And the second approach is deliver so much better results than kind of getting mad back, right? Yeah. Or sad or whatever, you know, there's a whole gamut of emotions. And even, you know, people that have dealt with traumatic experiences, until I was introduced to this work, I had no idea how intensely someone could feel that in their body, and how logosynthesis could help relieve that afterwards you ask, so what do you feel now? And they're like, oh, that physical sensation is gone. And so to me, that just, it amazed me. And so why wouldn't we explore this as an opportunity to support leadership?
Yeah, we just make everybody's life a bit easier.
Yeah.
There's enough to do to handle all the changes that are happening all the time. So anything that helps to make it a bit more relaxed and a bit more simple, and it helps to communicate better with people.
And when we all understand, that was a little bit in my work environment, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, Cathy got triggered by something, right? So all of a sudden, instead of, oh, she's mad at me because of, and I use that word a lot, I guess, no, but you know, it's whatever is going on, right? Like then you're not taking it personally. It's like, oh, something happened. You know, there's some information for you to maybe explore.
Yeah, to do something.
And it's much more compassionate. Like it's a very compassionate model.
Yeah, because you just get a much better understanding by having a better understanding, certainly for myself, of my reactions and what was triggering them and what was behind that. Was that stuff that I needed basically to work on. But it's really helped me to be more understanding also for other people. And they sometimes come up with a reaction, I think, what the, yeah, I could really react. And I think, oh, wait a minute, there's probably something like this going on or whatever. Or I may be more curious, like what could be behind this, instead of just staying at this superficial level of, oh, you know, somebody's screaming or somebody's going like this. I'm going to start like this as well. But it just makes it, yeah, more, like you say, more compassionate, more empathy, more understanding. And so that means less resentment, less anger, less all these sort of staying angry and staying like this, because that just eats up a lot of energy and it doesn't really get you anywhere. So I do find being more relaxed generally, dealing with the reactions and then feeling, oh, nice, it's nice. Much better quality.
And there's so much, even like if you think of gender roles, and there's so many commonalities because we get messages from society as far as, you know, you should be the perfect mom, you should be the, you know, you should be the president of the organization, not just running the, you know, not just working. You should be the president of the organization. You should be the best mom. You should be volunteering. And those are not necessarily specific things that anyone told you, but they're messages you're picking up in the community. And of course you can do it all. And so you start to do it all. And then all of a sudden, you know, maybe your tone of voice isn't quite so nice. And then you have that, you know, from the book of Compelling People was Women Can't Get Angry. Well, when I'm stressed out, my voice might sound like I am angry. And so then that just kind of derails you along the way, right? And so one is neutralizing some of those messages you're getting, that you don't have to buy into it all. And the other piece is that, you know, as you kind of calm yourself, then your energy is available. And who knows, maybe you want to do all of that, right? And maybe you can do all of that. And maybe you'll find a supportive environment, and you can help create a supportive environment to create what you want. But if you're always fighting in the system, then you're not really getting there. You're stuck in that reactive mode. There's no space to choose, right? But when you kind of resolve some of those voices of authority, then you can have that creative space. Yeah. So there's aspects, I mean, you think of building resilience, you think of diversity and inclusion, you think of gender roles, you think of, kind of creating engagement of employees. If people are feeling dismissed because of your reactive behavior, you don't have a really engaged environment. And what leaders really struggle with is that whole piece around culture and retaining talent and, making people feel appreciated. And that's all energetic stuff, right? And that's what logosynthesis can help so much with, is just shifting the energy. And the key is that, and Willem's always, when I say, oh, so-and-so should do that, and it's like, no, there are no shoulds. And if it bothers you, then it's your work to do. And so as I change, resolve my triggers, then I can create more calm and clarity, then other people have more space to find their calm and clarity, and it kind of ripples through the organization. But yeah, I can't do your work for you, period.
No, that's fantastic. That's a nice summary to kind of end on, I think, because as you said, it kind of just rolled nicely to the summary there of what it's about and how people can appreciate of who they can be and who they are going to be and what they want to be. It's all about that appreciation for themselves and for other people.
But I think it's really that responsibility of dealing with your own stuff. For me, that is really the definition of true leadership. It's not to say to somebody else, you have to change, but to say, what do I need to do so that things work? And so I think that is the approach is just absolutely effective and wonderful. So yeah.
Totally agree. That's for the inspiring leaders in us all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be so difficult, right? Like
not
this
at all.
is a wonderful tool to help you not make it feel quite so difficult. Yeah.
Simple and easy to apply, but also to understand, and not to take it on board too heavy. I think that's the understanding that I'm getting from it. So I thank you for that, Cathy. That's wonderful.
Yeah. We're all a work in progress, right?
Exactly. Never ending. A day is another day.
Yeah, that's where we find our curiosity, and it's important to be curious when exploring this. It just opens such interesting doors.
It does. I mean, the curiosity, I love it. It's my buzzword. I love it all the time, especially when I do my coaching with my clients. It's always about curiosity, about what's going on, what's happening, etc. And the information that's coming back to me about who I am and how I can be for people. So it's very powerful indeed. Very powerful indeed. Beautiful. Cathy, thanks very much for your time. I know it's the afternoon for you over there, but really, really do appreciate it. If people want to find more information about you, do you have a website or do you have information that they can contact you on?
Yeah, so I have cathycaswell.com and also thehealthylivingplan.com. So, and then information on courses and books and coaching, but just even to connect with the Logosynthesis community. There's so many awesome professionals like Harriet that are coaching and that are supporting people through all types of issues with this one beautiful model. So yeah, we can certainly connect you with either myself, Harriet, or anyone that's kind of trained in this.
Beautiful. I'll put that in the comments when I post the video, etc. And for your books, where can people find your books? On your website, or is it on Amazon, or is it on?
They're on Amazon. They're on Amazon, and they are on my website as well. And the other thing I would just say for anyone interested in logosynthesis, there is a Facebook group, and it's just logosynthesis, and just ask to be invited to the group. And it is a really great learning community. So I encourage everyone to partake in that.
Yeah, so we'll put
Beautiful.
some of that information maybe when we share the link of
Yeah.
the video, so that people can have access to all of that.
Certainly will. Certainly will.
Mm.
Well, from behalf of Leadership Insight Group and Harriet, myself, and Bart, who's unavailable tonight, we wish to really thank you, Cathy, for your time. And it was an interesting conversation, really exploring many areas that we could continue talking about in thriving on in these times, because it's such a beautiful subject, and what you're doing as well in business, and as well as in general support with people. I think it's truly amazing. So I really deeply thank you for that, and look forward to having you again.
Yeah, thank you so
on,
much for the opportunity. I really love sharing it.
Thanks.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cathy. Take care now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.